Pull out your cell phones. If you want to participate in praying for Christ Church, I want you to text the word pray to that number that you see on the screen, 412-419-2318. If you already get the Saturday text reminding you to come to church, you can just open that text and reply right there and put the word pray. All goes to the same place. If you do that, here's what you're going to get. You're going to get prayer prompts from us as a church probably about 3 times a week. Just things that'll pop up in your text messages reminding you to pray. Might be praying for our youth, praying for our kids, praying for worship, praying for your family. We're just going to be throwing things out so you can be reminded, oh, I should be praying right now. You're also going to occasionally get an invitation to join me on some prayer walks that will just be impromptu. I'll be like, hey, I'm going to be at the Bethel Park High School tonight at 7 o'clock, and you can just join me if you want to join me, or I'll be at the church, or whatever. And we may actually throw some things in there about ways to fast and what you could be fasting for. So if you want to participate in that way, you can do that. This week, we're also going to put at door 2, right at that desk when you walk in the door, laminated maps of our building. And you can come in and grab one of those maps and walk the building and pray for the ministries that take place inside the building. Or you can just hold the map and pray over the map for the different areas that are inside of our building. Another great way to pray. Also, I want to encourage you to take some time to pray during one of our worship services. Not necessarily the one that you attend, but one of the other ones. And pray for the people who are leading worship. Pray for the people who are attending worship, that God opens up their hearts to receive the message that God wants them to receive. All of that together are ways that we can pray and worship and fast. But beyond all those structured times, I want to remind and encourage you that prayer and fasting are personal practices. As a church, we're going to do our best to equip you to be able to do everything we can so you can pray and fast easier. We're going to send prayer prompts and do prayer walks and put out books on prayer and fasting that you can read. But even with all the resources in the world, it comes down to, are you willing to take the time to pray and to fast? It is a personal practice. But even though it's a personal practice, you don't have to do it alone. Last week, as part of Youth Sunday, the theme was Better Together. Well, that theme of Better Together fits to praying as well. As a church, we can incorporate prayer and fasting into our small group activities, for example. Encouraging groups to have a dedicated time to do that kind of thing. Have a more intimate setting for support and accountability. We had our small group, the one I'm a part of, on Friday night, and as a small group, we made a decision to pray every week that God would show us how to move mountains. And then somebody in our group was like, man, when you think about that, that's a little scary, which is true. But it's something that we have made a decision to do together. I want to encourage you to find somebody to pray with. Have a prayer partner. That doesn't mean every time you pray you have to call them and pray together. That just means you check in on each other so that you know that you're praying and you have somebody that's holding you accountable and you have support. Because when it comes to praying, we are better together, just like the youth talked about last week. I'm reminded of a prayer partner that I had at my last church. His name was Gary, and we decided one day that we needed to be praying for our community. We wanted more kids coming to the youth group. We wanted more space to reach more people, and we were kind of landlocked as a church. So we met every week, and we walked the neighborhood. And we prayed for the kids that were in the community. And we prayed that God would give us property around the church so we would no longer be landlocked. We did that every week. After a couple of months, the youth group started to explode. Kids started coming from all over the place. Their parents started coming to church. And people who lived around the church started calling the church and offering for us to buy their property before they ever put it on the market because they were getting ready to move. After 9 months, the trustees of the church called Gary and I in and said, stop praying for property. We can't afford anymore. Because by that point, we had bought the entire block. 4 houses, a restaurant, a barbershop, 7 acres. They were like, stop. But it was unbelievable to see what happens when you connect with God and depend on God. So overall, we need to continue fostering a culture of dependence on God, emphasizing the importance of relying on God rather than human wisdom and effort. knowing that as we build that culture of dependence, seeking God's will become part of just what we do in every area of our life. You see, creating a community that actively seeks God's direction through worship and prayer and fasting requires intentional planning. It requires teaching. It requires a supportive environment. However, if we do those things, if we're intentional about integrating those things in the life of the church, Christ's church can continue to cultivate a deeper reliance on God and a clearer sense of God's direction.